There's this thing that happens sometimes when you're doing something completely ordinary, loading the dishwasher, walking through a parking lot, waiting in the checkout line at a grocery store. And a song comes on from a specific time in your life, and for just a second, the whole thing collapses. Not overwhelm, not grief, just a door opens in the middle of your Tuesday afternoon, and on the other side of it is 1999. And you are a completely different person standing in a completely different room. And then the song ends and you close the door again and you go back to your groceries. That happens to a lot of people with the same song. And the interesting thing about that song is that almost nobody can tell you off the top of their head who made it. They know the melody. They know the chorus, the way it opens up and the sky gets bigger for about 30 seconds. They know how it felt coming out of a car radio in August. But the name attached to it, it takes a second. It floats just slightly out of reach, the way the names of good teachers sometimes do. Present enough to matter, distant enough to be easy to forget. She's so high above me. His name is Tal Bachman. And the thing about Tal Bachman, the thing that makes this particular whatever happened to different from most, is that what happened to him is actually a more interesting story than the fame part, not in spite of the fame, because of it. Here's how big that song actually got. Number 1 on Adult Top 40. Number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 in August of 1999. Top 10 in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, in Canada, number 3. And this wasn't a slow creep. It moved fast, the way the good summer songs do, the ones that feel like they were already there before the radio told you about them. TRL had it in rotation between Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys, which in the summer of 1999 was roughly the equivalent of having a seat at the most crowded table in the cafeteria. VH1 was in on it. Radio ads came in fast, and then the phone started ringing, the actual radio station request lines, which people still used, because it turned out that She's So High was exactly the kind of song that made people want to call someone. BMI Song of the Year, 2 Juno Awards, Best New Solo Artist, Album of the Year, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, Rolling Stone, Q Magazine, a tour with Bryan Adams, a tour with the Barenaked Ladies. For about 2 years, Tal Bachman was doing the full circuit. And I want to stop there for a second, because it's easy to read that list as triumphant, which it was, genuinely, but there's something in it worth noticing. That list is also a description of a very specific kind of exhaustion. The same 3-minute song. Every night, every city, every radio station morning show, every sound check, and where did the idea for this come from question, every time someone hands you a set list with the same song at the top of it, it's your song, the one that came from somewhere real inside you. And you are grateful for every single performance of it. And some nights, if you're being honest, it's just work. There's this moment some of us hit in our 30s where the thing we swore would change everything finally happens. The promotion, the book deal, at the big client, and then the next morning you still have to do the dishes. It's not disappointment exactly. It's that weird, hollow, oh, it's still just me in here feeling. In 1999, Tal Bachman is standing on TV sound stages and festival stages, singing the same 3-minute song that suddenly bought him a passport to everywhere he thought he wanted to go. And somewhere inside that run, between the Juno trophies and the Bryan Adams gigs, there's this dawning sense that the hit didn't rewrite his story so much as underline it in a different color. That's not a tragedy. That's just what the inside of success actually feels like, when the music stops and the room goes quiet. Now, we need to go back. Not far, just far enough to understand who Tal Bachman actually was before any of this. His father is Randy Bachman. And if you're watching this channel, that name doesn't require explanation. But here's the version that's easy to forget. Randy Bachman wrote American Woman on a broken guitar string at a dance in Ontario in 1969. Improvised a riff to stall for time while he changed the string, and the people in the crowd started cheering before he even knew what he was doing. He formed Bachman-Turner Overdrive, which gave you Takin Care of Business and You Ain't Seen Nothin' Yet. He was the first artist in history to have a #1 song on the American charts with 2 completely different bands. There's a guitar at the center of all of it. A 1957 Gretsch 612, that Randy used to write almost every one of those songs, American Woman included. See, a guitar that he loved the way certain people love objects that feel like they contain some part of their own mind. That guitar was stolen from him in 1976, gone for 46 years. It came back during COVID, found in a pawn shop in the Netherlands by a Dutch musician, returned to Randy on a special episode of The Late Show, in a story that is frankly almost too cinematic to be real, except that it happened. That guitar is the sound of Tal Bachman's childhood, not metaphorically. He grew up hearing it. He grew up in a house where music wasn't a career path, it was just the air. The conversations, the records, the musicians coming through, the stories about venues and tour buses and the specific strange physics of a room full of people, all feeling the same thing at the same time. And then Tal did something you might not have predicted. He went to university. He studied political philosophy, not as a hobby, not as a detour, as a serious, sustained intellectual pursuit, the kind where you actually read Plato and Locke and think hard about the questions they're asking, which are stripped down. Who gets to decide what people believe? How do institutions shape thought? What do power structures look like when they're dressed up as culture? He spent years on this. And I want you to hold on to that because it becomes the most important thread in the entire story. Then the music came back. He started writing songs in Vancouver, demoing on his own, off the strength of his own work, songs like If You Sleep, figuring out whether he had something that was actually his and not just inherited. Columbia Records thought he did. They signed him. The producer was Bob Rock, who had worked with Metallica and Mötley Crüe and knew how records were supposed to hit. And the record hit because She's So High was specifically good. Tal has talked about being partly inspired by Sheryl Crow's If It Makes You Happy, that quality a song has when it sounds like confession but lands like a pop hook, when it's personal enough to feel true and simple enough to feel universal. The awkward high school moment at the center of it, some girl so far out of reach she might as well have been a historical figure. That's not manufactured. That came from somewhere real. People could feel the difference, so the machine ran, and it ran well. And then, it's 2003, 2004. The second album is Staring Down the Sun. Aeroplane gets some traction. It ends up in American Pie presence, Bandcamp, which in 2005 is maybe not the cultural landmark you dream about, but it's real. It's reaching people. The record isn't bad, but the specific alchemy that made She's So High happen, the particular combination of label momentum and format radio timing and cultural luck, the moment when the machine is lined up behind you and the world is briefly, improbably listening. That alchemy doesn't replicate. It's not supposed to. It's a one-time reaction, not a formula. The industry was pivoting toward post-Napster survival mode, pop-punk, heavier compression, the early versions of what would eventually become the streaming economy. And Tal Bachman looked at the reinvention options in front of him, spent the next 5 years chasing a format that wasn't particularly interested in him anymore, and made a different calculation. He kept making music. He kept touring, especially in Canada, where the audience for what he was doing was real and consistent and didn't need him to be something he wasn't. He wasn't disappearing. He was just refusing to perform the specific kind of public desperation that the mainstream music business tends to reward in its second acts. And here is where the story gets genuinely interesting, because this is the part nobody tells. Remember the political philosophy. After the faith exit, a long, costly, private process of leaving the Mormon church he'd been raised in, something he's talked about openly and without drama as one of the harder things he's done, Tal started writing. Long-form essays on media, on institutions, on the exact structural questions he'd been studying in university about how power shapes what we're allowed to believe and say. He was good at it. Not preachy, not loud. The voice of someone who has been sitting with an argument for years before deciding to write it down. And here's what that actually is when you step back and look at the shape of this life. A man who grew up inside one of the most famous engines in Canadian rock music, who left to study how institutions shape human thought, who then entered one of the most powerful institutional machines in popular culture, the American major label system, and got processed through it, who came out the other side, intact, and spent the next 20 years writing and talking about exactly how that machine works. He didn't just have the experience, he had the language to describe it. That's genuinely rare. Most people who survive the pop star cycle spend the rest of their lives either chasing it or running from it. Tal Bachman did something harder. He looked at it clearly from the outside and started explaining it. That's not a consolation prize for a faded career. That's a second act with its own internal logic. Meanwhile, his dad. Tal and Randy started performing together, first as a duo, then more fully as Bachman-Turner Overdrive. A YouTube series called Bachman and Bachman, two men swapping stories, playing songs, being genuinely funny together without a writer's room, 20 episodes without repeating a song. In 2023, Tal officially joined BTO. In 2025, they went out on the Bachman Overdrive national tour across Canada with a new single called 60 Years Ago, a tribute to the Winnipeg music scene of the 60s that shaped everything Randy became, and Tal's daughter Coco was on drums behind them. 3 generations of Bachmans making actual noise in actual rooms. There's a quiet decision a lot of people make in their 40s that never goes on Instagram. You stop chasing the version of your life that impresses other people, and you start protecting the version you can actually live in. For Tal Bachman, it doesn't look like some dramatic walk-off. It looks like the spotlight just slowly shrinking until it's the size of a theater stage with his dad, or a long podcast conversation, or an essay under his own byline instead of a banner ad on MTV. From the outside, it reads as one-hit wonder. From the inside, it's a guy who tasted the big machine, decided how much of himself he was willing to spend on it, and quietly drew a line. So where is Tal Bachman in 2026? Here's the actual situation as of right now. His father, Randy Bachman, 82 years old, is currently headlining arenas across North America alongside Burton Cummings as the reunited Guess Who on the Takin' It Back tour. The first time these two men have performed together under that name in 23 years. The trademark dispute that kept it from happening got resolved in September 2024. They performed at the Rock Legends Cruise in February 2026. The Canadian leg started in May. The US leg, with Don Felder from the Eagles opening, kicked off in June, hitting Chicago, Detroit, Boston, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Randy has described it as a 2 to 3 hour Springsteen kind of marathonic show, 30 classic songs. 30. His father's headlining arenas at 82. Tal, who had the #1 song in 1999, is watching that happen from the side. And based on every interview and appearance in the last few years, he seems genuinely delighted by it. Not rueful, not wistful in the wrong direction. Delighted, the way you are when something important to someone you love finally comes full circle. She's So High now has hundreds of millions of streams. In recent interviews, Tal has mentioned the song still turns up in countries he's never been to, on playlists, in languages he doesn't speak. He finds that genuinely funny and genuinely moving, which tells you something about where he is with the whole thing. Not performing gratitude. Not swallowing bitterness. Just actually okay with the gap between what that song became and what came after it. He appears on podcasts, he writes, he shows up at conferences and conversations about media, civil liberties, and the structural questions about culture that he's been turning over since his university days. The political philosophy degree took 30 years to fully earn its keep, just not in a way anyone could have predicted from the outside in 1999. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. Somewhere in North America right now, She's So High is playing. In a grocery store, in the background of someone's TV. On a radio station that sounds like someone sealed a room in 1999 and forgot to open the windows. And if you're the kind of person watching this video, well, there's probably a version of this that's already happened to you. You've already had the half second of recognizing those opening notes and then feeling something you didn't quite expect to feel in the middle of a completely ordinary afternoon. Not overwhelmed, just A door opened. That's the specific superpower of songs like this. They don't age the way music is supposed to age. They age the way photos do, smaller than you remember, but in some ways more vivid for the narrowing. The room that felt infinite in 1999 is now a room you can see from the doorway, and you're standing there thinking, this is it. But it's not a disappointed thought. It's a strange, quiet recognition. This small, bright, specific thing, this was part of the architecture of an entire summer, of a whole way that an era sounded. What Tal Bachman understood, eventually, or maybe always, is that making a thing that good is enough. Not everything. Not a career guarantee or a permanent identity or a passport to the life you thought you were buying with it. But enough. Just a song that plays in countries you've never visited 26 years later. Just a song that still makes someone stop pushing a grocery cart for half a second and then keep going. And meanwhile, his father's playing arenas, his daughter's on drums. That stolen guitar came home. He figured out the difference between the size of his fame and the size of his life. And he chose his life. Not loudly, not as a statement, just quietly, steadily, over a very long time, while the machine he'd moved through moved on without him and found new people to process. There's something worth sitting with in that. Not that the big moment didn't matter. It did. It clearly did. It still reaches strangers on the other side of the world. But that the big moment was never the point. The point was the work, the questions, the music made on the right terms, in the right room, with the right people. His dad is out there right now, somewhere on a summer tour, playing American Woman on a guitar that was stolen for 46 years and came back. Tal Bachman is somewhere doing the thing he does, writing, playing, talking, making music with his family in rooms that are full enough. And a song from 1999 is playing somewhere you didn't expect it. And for just a second, the door opens.